All right, what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to another episode of the Just Ballin' podcast, where we have a lot to talk about today. We are going to talk about some Eastern Conference exit teams that ended up getting eliminated over the last couple of days, including the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Before we get into all of those, kind of similar version of what I did in the last episode of the pod, where we talked about the Pelicans' future, the Lakers' future, and the Phoenix Suns' future, I just want to kind of recap game number 6 between the Knicks and the 76ers. Obviously, as a Knicks fan, this is the series I'm most invested in, and I swear it is unhealthy for the amount of energy and just overall, I guess, dedication I have to this series alone. Like, I feel like I'm physically sick watching this series because I'm so stressed out and I am just like bouncing off the walls, pacing back and forth in my room every time I'm watching this game. And it's funny because I made the joke throughout all of Thursday that I shouldn't even watch this game until middle of the fourth quarter, because what's the point? I know it's going to be close. And funny enough, I should have did that, right? Because the Knicks had a 22-point lead in the first quarter. Everything was hitting. They were firing on all cylinders. DiVincenzo's back. After having a rough couple of games in this series, he was back, knocking down his threes. Brunson looked great. Hardenstein looked great inside. And Anunoby was creating his own shots. And the Knicks were up by 22 in the first quarter. And you're like, wow, probably the Knicks have this. It's not even going to be a competitive game 6. This is kind of disappointing because every game has been competitive so far. But me, as a Knicks fan, I knew that they were going to blow that lead. Like, my Sixers fan, like, friends, they were texting me saying, like, congrats on the series win. And I'm like, don't worry. Like, they're going to blow this game. Like, just be patient. Yeah, they'll be close. And the Sixers will have a lead at one point. Funny enough, they did. Buddy Hield gets unleashed in the second quarter. For somebody that has done nothing in this series so far, he looked lost out there, had no confidence in his shot, was a spark plug for the Sixers in this game to keep their season hopes alive. He was 6 for 9 from 3, knocked down 6 threes. He was a plus 12. I don't know why Nick Nurse decided not to play him that much in the second half compared to what he played in the first half because of how important he was. But Tobias Harris was going to be the downfall of this team, having to play him 30 minutes a night just because he's making $40 million here, even though he's a net negative to this team. And he finishes his Sixers career in this final game with 0 points and being a minus 10 overall on a plus minus. Goes 0 for 2 from the field. This man is making $40 million and took 2 shots. It may be worse than Ben Simmons' confidence at this point. I don't think he's getting as much hate, though. I don't know. He is getting a lot of hate in the Sixers side of things and their fans for sure. But this series was back and forth. The Knicks were up 3-1. They obviously blew that game on Tuesday. I was there live. It was the worst experience ever after having so much fun for the first 47 and a half minutes of that game. And the Knicks were up 3-2 going into last night. And the Sixers had a +2 point differential in this series. That's how like close every single game was. The only somewhat like not blowout, but Sixers convincingly won game 3, the first one in Philly. And then obviously the Knicks playing so good defense in game 4. They end up winning that game. And then the game 5 debacle, man. I'm taking years off my life stressing about this series. I'm so happy it's over. I think I'm okay. I'm at peace if the Knicks do lose to the Pacers in round 2. It just had a little bit of fire in me too because I live in Philadelphia. I've been surrounded by the process and all their fans basically since 2017, and that's when I pretty much came here for school and then graduated in 21. And then ended up living here still since. So I'm surrounded by Sixers fans on the daily. And, oh man, it was going to feel so good if the Knicks beat the Sixers. I remember, like, the series line came out. It was, like, -110 a piece. I was like, screw it. I'm throwing my whole FanDuel balance on the Knicks series win. So I was stressing that out as well because I'm like, you know what? We're going down. It's going to be a win-win. I'm not hedging my emotional side of things here. And the Knicks get it done in 6 games. They win as the 2 seed. They should have won this series. I think they were the better team with or without Julius Randle. It's funny the Knicks are doing all this without their second best scorer, and they had to replicate 24 points a night that they're getting from OG, from Josh Hart, from DiVincenzo. And I just got to give a shout out to the Nova boys in this game, man. Like Jalen Brunson setting playoff records, doing something that hasn't been done since Oscar Robinson. 4 playoff games in a series with 40 plus points and 10 plus assists. This dude looked like one of the 10 best players and maybe even one of the 7, 6, 5 best players in the league over the last couple of games after struggling in the first 2. Funny enough, they won those first 2 games in which Brunson struggled, and then Brunson looked like the Brunson we saw throughout the regular season, getting to his spots, just hitting clutch shots, contested shots. And I know that some Sixers fans are kind of annoyed with the way he kind of foul hunted, and I will agree. I'm not going to say there, and you know what, Brunson doesn't look for fouls. He definitely does. He's basically going foul hunting for foul hunting with him and Embiid. But I don't think the thing he does where he gets ahead of the defender and then he kind of stops and gets the defender on his back and then jumps in the air is anything at all like what Trae Young was doing back in the bubble or in the 2021 season, because Trae Young or even players at that time that were doing that, like Steph Curry, a bunch of guys did it, they would kind of launch their body into the defender, they would stick kind of their butt out and try to draw contact that way. Brunson, if you watch it, goes straight up. He does not lean back into Kelly Oubre or Nick Batum on which those fouls were called. He goes straight up, and I don't think, I hate to see it called defensively. It definitely shouldn't be an offensive foul, but I'd be perfectly fine if it was a non-call, and like the one on Batum, Brunson missed the free throw anyway, so maybe that was karma. But I don't think that he was replicating it all. Like, it's the same idea of what Trae Young was doing, but Batum and Oubre are on them. You're kind of in his space, and he's going up and you're altering the shot. That's a foul. It's objectively a foul call. So I find it funny people on Twitter are kind of like, they're like, I guess as Sixers fans kind of crying about that, which I get. Like, I would be crying if the roles were reversed and Maxey was doing this and my Knicks just lost. Like, I would do the same thing. I'm not going to be hypocritical, be like, yeah, I have ethical hoop standards like every other fan. No, you're irrational when you're a fan. You're biased. And like, at the end of the day, I'm going to realize that I'm biased. I think it's okay to be biased. It's okay to be passionate about a team one side, but I think it's not cool if you can't realize that and you think you're still like your team does everything right, nothing wrong, and that's objectively true. So this series is done. Thank God. Like I said, I'd be at peace if the Knicks do lose to the Pacers. That's going to be a fun series for sure, because you kind of have like Brunson versus Halliburton, Siakam versus OG, obviously two former Raptors together. And we can kind of go into, before I go into, I guess, like the Bucks Pacers side of things, we could talk about the 76ers and their offseason, because another year of the process, another year of disappointment pretty much. This is another non-conference finals appearance for Joel Embiid in his Sixers tenure. Obviously just kind of dating back to like their first playoff appearance in 2018. Losing to Boston. 2019 was the heartbreaker to Toronto in round 2. 2020 just getting bounced in the bubble pretty much. 2021, the season for hell for them, thinking they're going to make it to the conference finals as a 1 seed, and they ended up losing to Atlanta, getting upset in round 2. Obviously, that was the Ben Simmons series. That was his last as a Sixer. In the 2022 playoffs, who did they lose to in the 2022 playoffs? Was it Boston? No, it was Miami. Miami beat them in the 2022 playoffs, and Miami lost to Boston in the conference finals. And then 2023, obviously last year, they blew a 3-2 lead to Boston in round 2. And this year, they lose in 6 to the New York Knicks. So, yeah, another failed year for the 76ers and their hopes of making it to the conference finals. But I think a glimmer of hope, you're off the Tobias Harris contract. That is going to be basically $40 million off the books. Tyrese Maxey, like based off that Game 5 performance alone, looks like he could be a 1B to Embiid's 1A going forward. So I don't think you need to worry about getting another star this offseason. This team is going to have ample cap space, and they can wait on Maxey, obviously, because he's going to come back. He's going to sign the rookie max extension, and his cap hold's only around $13 million. So the 76ers are going to have a lot of wiggle room to kind of fill out this roster and hopefully have a little bit more continuity. That's why I think also the Sixers weren't going to do much this year, because these guys are all thrown together this year. Like, they traded for Buddy Hield. They got Kyle Lowry in the buyout market. Nick Batum was in the James Harden trade. DeAnthony Melton was there last year, for sure. But like Kelly Oubre on the minimum. And I feel like a lot of these guys were in and out. So like there was not many players with the chemistry from last year's team into this year's team, which is going to be tough. Like, Campaign was new on this team as well. And he played vital minutes and hit some clutch shots or big shots for the Sixers in this series for sure. So I think if you're Philly, I would not look in the Paul George side of things. If you could convince Pascal Siakam to leave Indiana and come to Philly, by all means do that. But I would not look at Paul George. I think that would be stupid and ill-advised, because I would not feel comfortable giving him 4 years, $180 million for somebody that is way too inconsistent, both on the floor and with his health at this point of his career. I think Philly desperately needs to release B-Ball Paul. It's a non-guaranteed contract. He is not good as a backup center for this team, and it showed in this series. The Sixers have 4 guys technically under contract, and it's Joel Embiid, Paul Reed, Jeff Dowden, who probably won't be on this team next year because he has a club option. You never know, but probably not. He's 27. And Ricky Council, who can actually be a rotational piece for you next year as long as he develops, former Razorback. And they need a backup big man. I think like Isaiah Hartenstein, who's a free agent. I would throw $15, $16, $17 million at Isaiah Hartenstein, who you could play with Embiid out there and he can space the floor, but when is Embiid fully healthy for a season, right? Isaiah Hartenstein was so big for the Knicks when Mitchell Robinson was out this year, that he could be that for Philadelphia. And the Sixers are such a net negative when Embiid is off the floor. Hartenstein can make them, like, keep them afloat. And I think they should allocate money to Hartenstein or a center like that. Maybe Jonas Valanciunas, like somebody like that, a little bit of upper tier guy, where you give up a second for Clint Capella. But I don't really know if I'd want Clint. Like, you don't need to allocate so many resources to this because it's a backup center to your MVP caliber big man. But they need to upgrade that for sure. And then I think they could use another wing. I mean, if you can get some of these guys back, I would. Like, Kelly Oubre was good for you guys. I would think about giving him an extension if you don't get outbid for him, but don't overpay for him. I think if you can get Buddy Hield on like a 1-year prove-it deal again, like 1 year, $10 million, I would do that. And then if you can get maybe one of the better wings on the market, similar to like maybe what the Knicks did with Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, it's not going to be the greatest class in the world, and you probably want something a little bit better than DiVincenzo was for the Knicks. But just kind of looking at like the wings free agents right now, because obviously Maxey can run the point. You hope that Melton's healthy next year for sure, but like don't go like, I mean, LeBron is LeBron. Like, yeah, you get him, but I wouldn't go after Paul George. Wouldn't go after Klay Thompson. Obviously not Gordon Hayward. Like, DeMar DeRozan's interesting because he can create his own shot, and he's much better than Tobias Harris. So that is an interesting thing as well. If like Embiid's hurt, you now have DeRozan who can create his own shot and Maxey. Obviously the defense isn't great there, but if you're also able to bring back Kelly Oubre, who was a standout defender in the series, I would do that. I mean, the wing free agents aren't great. It's like Patrick Williams, Royce O'Neal, Kyle Anderson. I mean, Miles Bridges, if you wanted to take on that PR nightmare, but you know what, maybe I'll be brushed under the rug. Caleb Martin could be a free agent as well. I think I would just try to load up on these athletic wings, like your Kelly Oubre's, and Nick Batum isn't athletic by any means at this point of his career, but guys like that can hit shots, play defense, and have high basketball IQ out there. And you can get like 3 to 4 of those guys rather than that ends up being $40 million a year instead of paying Tobias Harris $40 million a year. I think the Sixers should be in good position as long as that beats fully healthy next year. I don't think he should play for the Olympics this summer. I mean, same with Kawhi Leonard. Like, I don't think it's worth it. It's not to re-aggravate an injury and you're going to miss the start of next year's season at all. You want to get fully healthy. Embiid was so hurt in this playoff series with this Bell's palsy. He was laying on one knee basically, and he's like limping out there. And it's like Brunson was able to drive by him. DiVincenzo was able to drive by him without worrying about a chase down block like the old Embiid would do, because Embiid can't really jump at all. So hopefully you get fully healthy Embiid, which we say this every year, but Maxey definitely softens the blow, and he looks like a star in this league. All right, next up, I want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks Indiana Pacers series. Obviously, for the Bucks, it's not how you wanted the season to go. You made a huge splash late in the offseason last year. You go out, you acquire Damian Lillard, you give up a fan favorite, Drew Holiday, who ends up in your arch rivals' laps in the Boston Celtics. So maybe if they knew that was going to happen, they wouldn't have done this trade. But Milwaukee ends up losing 120-98 to the Pacers last night. It really wasn't too competitive after. Honestly, throughout most of this game, there was some like coast like flirting with single-digit deficits, but Indiana was better, and that's going to make sense when Damian Lillard is playing on a sore Achilles. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who didn't play a single game in the series, so you're probably happy it went to 6. I thought he was going to come back in like game 3 or 4, and that just didn't happen. He was testing the waters for game 6. Maybe would have played game 7, but an unfortunate exit. I mean, Malik Beasley over the second half of this year just kind of flamed out on both offense and defense for them. This team is too old right now. They're starting 5, Bobby Portis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Pat Bev, Damian Lillard, all north of 30. Well, actually, Bobby Portis may be like slightly under 30. He might be 28. He's 29 right now. He'll be 30 in February. But you get what I mean. Like, it's a very old roster. We saw Danilo Gallinari in this series. Pat Connaughton, I just don't think should be a rotational guy in the playoffs. I don't think he's very good. He's not consistent enough with his jumper, and I don't really love his defense. The Bucks did the coaching change throughout this season, going from Adrian Griffin to Doc Rivers, which everybody was like, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. Doc Rivers has no track record outside of 2008 in the playoffs, and he had a losing record, 19-23 with Milwaukee, and he's on a multi-year contract, so he'll be back even if Giannis doesn't like him, which I don't know, man. Giannis, like, it definitely didn't help his PR this year with that whole coaching fiasco. They traded all their picks that they had left, rotational guys for Damian Lillard and Dame's first year here. They didn't get it done, but Dame played phenomenal in this series on like I said, a sore Achilles. And Chris Middleton kind of went back to the Chris Middleton of old, so it's kind of a shame we didn't get to see a healthy Giannis. If Giannis plays in the series, the Bucks win. I'm like 100%, 99% sure, because I know that the Pacers beat the Bucks throughout the regular season, but you had Giannis fully healthy in this series, I'd be confident that the Bucks would have gotten it done. But that's no slight to the Indiana Pacers, who played super competitive in this series. We had so many fun games out of Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell. These smaller guards stepped up defensively, offensively. Nembhard with his outside shooting, McConnell with his playmaking and dribbling inside the half court and inside the three-point line. Obi Toppin stepped up in Game 6 as well. And there's going to be some fun storylines for round number 2, because obviously the Pacers and the Knicks had so many back-and-forth rivalries in the 90s between Reggie Miller and the Knicks and the Larry Johnson 4-point play. Back in 2013, the Pacers ended the Knicks season in round number 2 in 6 games. That was like my childhood apex of Knicks basketball, was losing in 6 in round 2 to the Pacers. Yeah, I didn't have a lot to root for back then. Obviously, Roy Hibbert flashbacks will be going throughout the whole series. You have Obi Toppin versus former team. You have Pascal Siakam versus OG Anunoby, which I alluded to a little bit before. Tyrese Halliburton even had some beef with like a Knicks secondary commentator, Wally Szczerbiak. So there's a lot of storylines in this series that are going to be super fun as well. Pacers could 100% win this series. I don't know if the Pacers, like, Nembhard's going to make Brunson's life a living hell, but I'm not really worried too much about their defense. Like, if the Knicks ended up getting Boston, that's going to be an issue, because Boston has 4 different guys that can play elite defense that they can throw at Brunson. I think Brunson will be okay. Like, I don't think Nembhard is that much, like, better than, like, what Oubre played on the defensive end. I know he's pesty, and I know how good he was, and he could play 40 minutes a night. But I think Brunson will be okay. We'll see how Siakam looks against Anunoby, because that's who Anunoby will guard, which I'm excited for. And we'll see how this series looks. I mean, the Knicks are going to have a little bit easier of an opponent at the 5. Miles Turner versus Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein's a little bit easier than going up against Joel Embiid. But shout out to Miles Turner, who played great on the series on the defensive end of the floor and had his offensive moments as well. We'll see if Halliburton can go to pre-in-season tournament Halliburton in this series and step up offensively and actually be a good three-point shooter again. Pacers, like I said, could 100% win this series. The Knicks are favorited. I would say that the Knicks win this in 6 games again. It could be a really competitive 5. I don't think this series goes to 7, and I think if the Pacers win, it would also be in 6 games. I just don't see the series going to 7 if the Knicks Sixers didn't go to 7. But it's going to be a super fun series nonetheless. As for Milwaukee, man, it's tough. You basically have to run this team back. Like, you just signed Doc Rivers. You can blame this year on the injuries, which they kind of have been able to do since they won the finals in 21. Like, when they won it in 21, I thought that was going to be a start of a dynasty. I'm like, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best 26-year-old I've seen in quite some time, basically since 26-year-old LeBron or KD. And I'm like, who is stopping this guy in the playoffs? He can get anywhere where he wants. He can out-physical anybody inside the paint. He's an elite defender, and they have Drew and Middleton and all these guys around him. I'm like, this team is going to be back in the finals at least 2 more times in the next 5 years. And then in 2022, Middleton gets hurt. They blow a 3-2 lead against Boston in round number 2, which was pretty shocking when that happened. In 2023, last year, Giannis is half injured throughout that series against Miami, but still, they lost to an 8 seed in round 1. Like, shocker there. And this year, Giannis hurt the whole series. Dame hurt for some of these games, and they lose to a 6 seed and an inferior team at full strength, the Indiana Pacers. So this team has to run it back. I mean, Dame is making $48.7 million next year. Giannis is making the same amount. Middleton is making $31.5 million. Brook Lopez making $23 million. Bobby Portis, $12.5 million, which is going to be the final year of his deal. Pat Connaughton, $9 million. Marshall Beauchamp is under contract. Same with AJ Green, Andre Jackson, Livingston. And I want to apologize for my voice sounding raspy. I don't know. I guess I lost it last night with the Knicks game. I don't feel like I was even screaming that much. I feel like I was actually pretty quiet, because I'm like, nah, you can't keep screaming, because you're going to, like, one, lose your voice, which I guess ended up happening anyway, but you're just going to stress yourself out even more. But back to Milwaukee, I think you just got to run it back. I mean, if you can leverage Pat Connaughton and Beauchamp, or Pat Connaughton and Andre Jackson instead of having to give up first, because they do have their first in this draft, but I would like for them to use it. I think there's talent where they're going to be picking if they can end up with a Ryan Dunn defensively, but if they want to look at some shooting, Johnny Furphy, interesting out of Kansas, if they could somehow get Jared McCain, that would be phenomenal. Keyshawn George, I would like a ton coming out of Miami. There is definitely talent. Tristan De Silva out of Colorado could do it all. I think Milwaukee should draft those guys, and I feel comfortable about their futures on this team more than the Beauchamps or Andre Jackson. So I think I would leverage Beauchamp and Jackson along with Connaughton's contract to upgrade as a wing shooter off the bench. They would love to have Grayson Allen, because Malik Beasley, like I said, kind of folded, and I don't know if they're going to be able to afford Malik Beasley, but it would be nice to bring him back. But if they were going to enter the trade market, I mean, I would see, I'm trying to think like what they could get. I mean, Bogdan Bogdanovic would probably be attainable, but he's making a little bit too much money to go out and get. So you're kind of looking at like some of these sellers. I mean, Corey Kispert could be available. I don't know if Washington would really want Beauchamp or Andre Jackson. You're not gonna be able to probably get there financially for Malcolm Brogdon. You're just kind of looking for those like $11-12 million a year guys that could be on the market. And I don't really know. This team needs some backup big man help as well, with Lopez gonna be 37 next year. Yeah, so maybe they draft Zach Edey or Khalil Ware or Yves Missi out of Baylor. But this team, I think it's got to run it back, trade Pat Connaughton along with Jackson or Beauchamp, whoever can net more value. I don't know who it is. It might be Jackson because of his defensive potential, because I don't know about Marjan's offensive potential here in Milwaukee, but it could excel somewhere else. So I'm just trying to think. I don't know if you want Zach Collins. They may do Zach Collins for Connaughton straight up. I mean, you're going to have to pay the luxury tax, but even more on that. I'm just trying to think. But yeah, you just got to run this team back, and hopefully you're fully healthy in 2025, because for the third straight year, though, this team had an injury in the playoffs. It was Middleton in 2022. It was Giannis the last 2 years, and Dame at times this year. Just unfortunate luck, but at least they got a chip in 2021. And lastly, we could talk about the Miami Heat as well, who did end up losing to the Boston Celtics in 5 games. Honestly, impressed they were able to even get one game in this series, one win with no Jimmy Butler. This series was not competitive, really, outside of game number 2. I mean, Boston owned Miami, and it makes sense. Boston was the best team throughout the regular season. Miami wasn't, they're not a good team without Jimmy Butler. I feel bad for Bam. Like, he's trying his ass off out there, but this team just not have the firepower to compete with Boston. Like I said, I don't know how they won game 2. Well, I do. They shot a record pace for 3 points made in a playoff game. So that's kind of makes sense. Jimmy Butler apparently wants a max contract extension this offseason. He's due $48.5 million next year. To be honest with you, I don't know if I'm giving him that. He's 35 years old. He's had his injury concerns. Obviously, he's had his playoff Jimmy moments, and he's brought Miami to the finals in 2020 and 23. But I'd play it this year out. I'd play this year out, man. I mean, maybe you give him like a 2-year extension, so that basically covers him like $60 million in 26 and 27. But I'm not paying him to his age 38 season. Hell no. And I know wings age better than like guards and bigs, but I don't know, man. Jimmy, he's had his injury concerns, and this team needs to figure out what it could be as a roster. Now, Bam back next year, obviously premier position, and he's an elite defender. He's going to be fine. 27 next year. I would still flirt, once again, I know we've done this the last couple of off seasons. Let's see what we can move Tyler Hero for, right? Now, you traded that first round pick for Rozier, which I don't hate, because Rozier's under contract. He's still a good player. And hey, maybe at full strength with Rozier and Butler out there, they're able to beat Philly, or they're able to maybe push Boston to 6 or 7. But Rozier, he's making $24 million, $26 million next 2 years, and you give him a first. He'll be there. I don't think Hero and Rozier will work, and I think Hero, honestly, what Udonis Haslem said, he might be better suited off the bench. I don't know if Hero could be this top playmaker for this team. He takes some bad shots. He's very trigger happy from downtown, and I would still try to leverage him this offseason. Now, if it comes to a point with New Orleans or Cleveland and Brandon Ingram and Donovan Mitchell, who are 2025 free agents, kind of hint to their front offices that we're gone next year and I want to test free agency. That happens. Other teams that have assets to go out and trade for these guys, maybe, I don't know, like OKC or Utah, Brooklyn is in a different situation, but teams that have more assets than Miami may be a little wary, though. They're I don't want to give up all these picks and stuff if we're not even going to be able to retain them. So Miami could throw Hero and Hawkes or Hero and Jovic, and the next first round pick they can move and something like that. And Cleveland can be you know what, Hero's under contract for the next 3 years. We'll see what he can do with Garland, or New Orleans is you know what, Hero's under contract. We can also get another young piece in this trade, another first round pick down the line. Ingram's not re-signing. That happens. And then Miami probably has to feel comfortable about re-signing one of those guys. It's Miami. Jimmy can do his convincing, and Pat Riley as well. And you're playing for one of the best, if not the best coach in the NBA, in Eric Spoelstra. I would try to do that if I'm Miami. I'm trying to get Ingram. I'm trying to get Donovan Mitchell this offseason. I would not go for Trae Young. I mean, I would go for DeJounte Murray if you can leverage Duncan Robinson and keep Hero in that trade. Then I would go out and get DeJounte Murray. But this team also needs, I think, a 4, in my opinion. They need somebody between Bam and Jimmy, and that could be Nikola Jovic. I mean, he was only 20 this year, so he's well advanced for a 20-year-old, so I think he'll be fine. And Hawkes slowed down towards the second half of the year, and I think what we saw throughout Hawkes in the first half is probably what he's going to be throughout this whole rookie contract. He's not going to improve too much, in my opinion. He's already 22 years old. But this team, I think, needs some big man help. We'll see if Caleb Martin tests free agency. He has a $7.1 million player option. Maybe you can move Duncan Robinson in a first because Robinson only has 2 more years left on his deal. I don't know. I think this team needs a power forward for sure. I'm not sure who they're going to end up getting this offseason. They just need another one out there that's better than Kevin Love off the bench. They do have their first round picks, so I would target guys like Devin Carter out of Providence. I would target like Yves Missi out of Baylor, Deron Holmes out of Dayton. I also like Keyshawn George for them, Jared McCain, Kyle Filipowski at Duke. Those guys could be good for them next year for sure. But you could also, once you make that pick, trade it along with either Robinson or Hero for a bigger fish if it's going to be a Donovan Mitchell, if it's going to be a Brandon Ingram out there. Because for Miami, you're trying to win a championship before Jimmy Butler's basically done. He'll be 35 next year. So, yeah, you maybe have 1 or 2 more years, and you hope he's fully healthy. So, that is going to wrap it up for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the Just Ballin' Podcast. Sorry again if my voice is a little raspy for this one. Hopefully, we'll be better for the next episode. That should come out this week, and I wanted to still get 3 pods out for you guys this week. I can kind of get a good night's rest. I mean, last night, also, the game was 9 o'clock on the East Coast. What are we doing? Why is that a thing? Like, we live on the East Coast. I live in Philly and New York. Like, I'm a fan. Like, I live in the city where these 2 teams play. These games do not need to end at midnight. I'm lucky to do this full time now, where I could sleep in, even though I didn't because I was in New York when this happened, and I was driving back to Philly today at 5:45 in the morning. I didn't go to bed until 1:15, so I'm basically on 4.5 hours of sleep right now. And it would have been nice if this game did end at 9:30 or 10 compared to basically midnight. So what are we doing there? But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this pod. Maybe the next pod I'll know if who advances between Cleveland and Orlando, and then who advances between Dallas and the Clippers as well. I still think Dallas wins. That was my prediction. And I still think Cleveland wins. That was my prediction as well pre-series. I got the Knicks series right, Boston series right, OKC right, Denver right. Like I said, I have Cleveland and Dallas. The 2 I got wrong, I mean, I took Phoenix to beat Minnesota. That was a sweep. I was dead wrong there. And I took Milwaukee to beat Indiana in 7. I did not know that Dame was going to be hurt, and I thought Giannis was going to come back by like game 4. So that was wrong on me. Shout out to the Pacers. Round 2 is going to be fun. Like Nuggets, Timberwolves could be the best series of the playoffs or the best series of round 2. Knicks and Sixers definitely stole the show in round number 1. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching and listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.